Hello, dear friends. We go on talking about transformation, but with a focus on survival and resilience, not despair. Opinion piece: How to survive the crisis. 5 survival models in search of financial security. Alternatives to triumph over chaos. How to build thriving communities. Facebook announces a leak of thousands of documents. Record number of container ships off California. Fasten your seatbelts for turbulence ahead. Donald Trump announces plans to launch a new social network. Eurozone inflation at its highest level since 2008. European companies suffer from rising energy prices. European car industry crashes due to lack of microchips. Spanish justice orders El Pollo Carvajal to be handed over to the US. Gold posts back-to-back gains as inflation rises. Israeli company unveils easy-to-drive flying car. More evidence discovered that Earth flips over from time to time. The squid game is fashionable in Spain and worries children. The second largest subway room in the peninsula is found in Cantabria. Diva discovers a 900-year-old crusader sweat in Israel. Cuba reaches agreement with Paris Club to skip 2021 debt payments. Let's start. There is a great opportunity to seize this transformational moment and change it to our advantage. Don't get caught up in the distractions that are draining your time. Keep your eye on the prize. Communities that thrive on their own. Nearly 40% of American households have already faced serious financial hardship and have been unable to afford food and health care, according to a recent survey. Building a better future for our family is going to require a community effort, creative efforts, and innovative thinking. Building a solid foundation must include food security, energy supply, housing, health, and financial security. The goal of the system is to make everyone feel like they have luck, not access and no control. But the truth is that the people have far more power, talent, skill, and heart than they want people to believe. Differences. Successful people read a lot and like to read and research because they are very curious. They praise others. They risk change. They forgive easily. They take on new and good ideas. They never stop learning, are grateful for everything in their life, and set realistic goals and plans for their life. Unsuccessful people watch a lot of television every day, criticize a lot, and are afraid of change. They talk about others and are resentful. They think they already know it all and also like to blame others for all their problems. They rarely set goals and do not pursue plans. Here are 5 models for making a living while building communities to get ahead of your agenda and provide some of the foundation needed to thrive. If all 5 models are applied in a given community, the impact would be remarkable. First, keep the necessary supply chains working outside the system. Second, community skills website for buying, selling, exchanging, gathering, and building together. Third, business skills teachers locally and online. Fourth, expand cooperatives for farmers and beyond farmers. Fifth, collaboration of local health professionals and telemedicine. Reflections and predictions. Fasten the golden buttons. They will be deployed in all countries. Then comes the internet shutdown called 10 Days of Darkness, mentioned in 7 publications of the round letter. In that time, all those who colluded with the bad guys will be arrested. The dark side will fall in those days and nights. The pain passes now, and the sleeping ship must experience the pain to awaken. Civilization will never be the same after the Great Fall. It's time to awaken the ship. Puffness said, "There is a lot going unnoticed at this time. Issues are being adjusted and many legal matters are being prepared. Some people think there is nothing going on, but there is a lot going on. No one can tell you anything, but we can assure you that we like that we see and are more comfortable than we have been in months. It is being allowed to unfold as it will now make the world an easier place to reside and for you to put your soul into year and further growth. You cannot tell what is happening, but it simply is. And you need to look away from the end goal and do the rational thing. We are giving the go signal to several auxiliary groups that will help transition players to their rightful places. You may not understand, but that's not the problem. It's all happening, and in fact, some of it has begun. Other cultures adapted because they knew the power ring of ancient tyrannies. The human mind is being programmed. This has been going on for a long time. This is going to end. The flame of divine truth will burn the world of lies and to ashes. In times of material darkness, it may seem that all there is a lie. Then changes come from an invisible hand with visible results. Argorians update. Quantum waves entering the Earth bring radical changes in all planetary structures. The structures of the three-dimensional level are stratified and transformed for the fourth-dimensional level. Society shakes in agony, oscillating from one global event to another, from previous emergency plans to new ones, realizing that it is at a crossroads. Humanity is increasingly stratified, trying not very consciously to adapt to the changes taking place. Blockade of Goods. Record number of container ships off the California coast. 100 ships are blockaded at sea outside the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, making the backlog of cargo ships the worst it has ever been. Another 45 ships are expected to arrive Thursday. California ports are among the least efficient in the world. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach in Southern California handle the most maritime cargo of all U.S. ports, but are some of the least efficient in the world, according to a ranking by the World Bank and IHS Markit. Supply chain crisis drives globalization's latest setback. Nothing embodies the promise of globalization more than the humble supply chain, but that is now under siege, threatening to end an era of low costs and infinite variety. 14 people are to blame for much of the nationwide product and the parts shortages plaguing America. Those people are about to be publicly named by Hal Turner on his show. The Big Quit. 4.3 million Americans quit their jobs in August alone. 20 million have quit their jobs since April, mostly in low-income jobs. jobs, so companies are forced to raise wages to retain workers. The triple challenge facing the economy. The economy is recovering after the disaster caused by the crisis. If the Fed's forecast of 5.9% economic growth this year comes true, it would be the highest since 1984. However, although the economic upturn is advancing, the path is not clear. Inflation has reached its highest point in 13 years. There are shortages of some products due to problems in global supply chains, and there are fewer people willing to enter the labor force. Chip shortages and Hurricane Ida weighed on fab production. Factory output fell to the most in 7 months in September, as a global shortage of semiconductors depressed motor vehicle production, further evidence that supply constraints are hampering economic growth. Real estate distress is a complicated call. There is big money flooding into real estate, an industry with uncertain prospects after a downturn. Barry Sternlich, Starwood Capital, has raised a new distressed fund with $10 billion in cash. That allows Sternlich to pick up properties from hotels to offices. New York biological attack test. Non-toxic gas being deployed at 120 locations in New York City between October 18th and October 29th, including road traffic, as part of the biological attack preparedness test. The test gas is non-toxic and poses no health risk to the public. Most of the locations are above ground, including some parks. Several underground subway stations are also included. Donald Trump announces plans to launch a new social network. Trump Media and Technology Group has announced that it will soon launch a social network called Truth Social to stand up to the tyranny of the big tech companies, in quotes. Markets. Wall Street closes higher as earnings reports ease investors' fears. The S&P 500 and Dow Jones closed higher Wednesday as investors saw better than expected third quarter earnings. Wall Street doubles down on the big inflation trade. Money managers are raising their bets on the big inflation trade of 2021 as the biggest risk to price stability in more than a decade rocks corporate boardrooms and Wall Street trading floors. Gold rises. Gold rose for a second day after a Fed official downplayed the possibility of an imminent rate hike. Gold futures post back-to-back gains. Gold futures close higher for a second straight day Wednesday as support from concerns about the rise in inflation outweighed strength in treasuries. 10-year treasury yield holds at 5-month high. The 10-year rate held at levels not seen since May after it outperformed Wednesday auction of 20-year treasuries. Cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin breaks all-time high. Bitcoin hit an all-time high on Wednesday as the red-hot market debut of the world's first cryptocurrency exchange-traded fund boosted investor interest in cryptocurrencies. The world's leading digital currency surpassed $66,700 and was up more than 7% from the previous day. JP Morgan says Bitcoin's record run is being driven by inflation. Concerns about inflation rather than exuberance over Bitcoin's first futures market are driving the digital currency to record levels, according to JP Morgan strategists. Lawmakers say Facebook can't be trusted to manage cryptocurrencies. A group of lawmakers said Facebook can't be trusted to manage cryptocurrencies and urged the social media platform to immediately suspend a small pilot test of its cryptocurrency wallet called Novi, which launched Tuesday. Facebook announces a leak of thousands of documents that would be published in coordination by more than 30 media outlets. Several internal Facebook documents have been leaked to the press and are now being scrutinized by journalists, the company announced Monday. In quotes, right now, more than 30 journalists are finishing a coordinated series of articles based on thousands of pages of leaked documents, the social network's media team wrote on Twitter. Europe. Eurozone inflation at highest level since 2008, and as energy prices continue to rise, the Eurozone's annual inflation rate stood at 3.4% in September, up from 3% in August, and that is the highest level in 13 years. The data show that annual inflation in the European Union was 3.6% last month, up from 3.2% in August. A year earlier, the rate was only 0.3%. IMF rules out inflationary spiral in Europe. The International Monetary Fund on Wednesday ruled out an inflationary spiral in Europe as it expects recent price rises to moderate in the second quarter of 2022. Businesses are suffering the impact of rising energy prices, with no respite for households or industrial giants. The first energy crisis of the green transition era is also taking its toll on businesses. Rising electricity prices have forced zinc producer Nyrstar to reduce its production by up to 50%. Three of its European smelters are affected, including the one located in the Netherlands. The European automotive sector crashes due to the lack of microchips. The microchip crisis is weighing heavily on the European automotive sector. Car sales plummeted last September to levels not seen since the mid-1990s. In September, demand for new cars fell to 718,598 units, the lowest number of registrations for a September since 1995. Germany economy forecast downgraded. Germany cuts its growth forecast as global economic recovery is held in check by the energy crisis and supply chain meltdown. With an economy based on manufacturing and exports, the German economy will not take off in the next half year, according to experts. A reason for the pipeline. The reason Germany had to do that pipeline deal with Russia is because there was not going to be energy coming from anywhere else. They were forced to do it because they had no choice. That's the geopolitics of oil and gas. The Russians knew this and laughed. If Germany hadn't done this, they were going to be cold and dark this winter. So they had to do this pipeline to keep the flow going. If it started to derail the price and availability of energy, it would collapse Germany's ability to be productive and keep its people going. That's what's happening around the world right now. Russia's permafrost melts, threatening homes and infrastructure. The former airport in Siberian settlement of Churapcha has been unusable for years. Its runway transformed into a swampy field of mounds and swollen reliefs. Tension in the Black Sea after two Russian fighters scotted two strategic bombers. On Tuesday, two Russian Sukhoi 30 fighters escorted two U.S. strategic bombers flying over the Black Sea. Spain. Iberdrola to invest $8.2 billion in UK mega offshore wind farm. Spanish global wind energy leader Iberdrola will invest $8.24 billion in a wind farm complex in the North Sea off Britain's east coast, in its largest investment in projects worldwide. Spanish justice orders the delivery of El Pollo Carvajal to the US. The agreement comes after the Ministry of the Interior denied him political asylum in Spain, although there is still room for appeal against this decision. He is wanted for alleged drug trafficking, among other crimes. The Ramaliega Speleological Association has discovered in the interior of the Ornijo Massif in Cantabria what could be the second largest subway room in volume in the Iberian Peninsula, about 800,000 cubic meters, and the third largest in surface area, with more than 17,800 square meters. The Squid Game is in fashion in Spain, outlet for the fun of simulating your own death. Teachers and child psychologists warn about the number of minors who have watched the series El Juego the Squid Game. Children simulate their scenes loaded with violence. From the educational sector, they point out that parents should filter the content their children consume. Americas. Record number of arrests at US-Mexico border. US authorities arrested 1.7 million migrants at the border with Mexico this fiscal year, the most ever recorded. Bitcoin puts US and El Salvador in the same boat. The United States and El Salvador have something surprising in common. Surveys show that Hispanics and African Americans are the top owners of cryptocurrencies. That's partly due to discrimination and lagging access to traditional financial services. Those are also among the top reasons the Central American nation last month turned to Bitcoin as legal tender. It's a loss for conventional banks. Cuba strikes deal with Paris Club to skip 2021 debt payment. Cuba struck a deal with the Paris Club of creditor nations to postpone an annual debt payment due in November until next year, the latest sign that the communist government is suffering a severe currency crisis. Blinken visits Colombia. Accountability for human rights abuses committed during Colombia's decades-long conflict and recent protests are key to preventing future abuses. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday during a visit to the Andean country. Aeromexico posts net loss of nearly $109 million in third quarter. Aeromexico Group, which operates Mexico's largest airline, reported on Tuesday a net loss of $108.7 million in the third quarter. Rescued a group of Paraguayans working in slavery conditions in Brazil. They were located in a kind of bunker in a clandestine cigarette factory. There, the Brazilian police freed on Tuesday 17th Paraguayans and one Brazilian forced to work in conditions analogous to slavery. The operation dismantled an organization dedicated to cigarette smuggling and counterfeiting. Mysterious boxes wash up on Brazilian beaches. A team of Brazilian researchers has discovered that mysterious boxes with inscriptions in Japanese that washed up on the shores of northeastern Brazil in August. They came from a Nazi cargo ship that was sunk off the coast of Brazil in January 1944 by a US Navy destroyer. The ship had sailed with a cargo of rubber and tin from Southeast Asia. China. China's housing price slump casts another shadow over the economy. The slump in China's property market has intensified in recent weeks as sales slump and more developers default on their debts. Now the recession has reached another milestone. Home prices have begun to fall for the first time in 6 years. China avoids bankruptcy. Now President Xi Jinping is stopping the total collapse of the Chinese economy by paying interest on China's domestic bonds. After the initial default, he was 30 days to try to get the capital to pay. Xi is clearly not going to help Evergrande. If he was going to help it, he would have already done so. So, let's travel to the future. It is October 23rd, and Evergrande defaults, for it's to say it would not pay its international creditors. The other indebted Chinese property developers would follow suit. Within 24 hours, the effect would reach the world stock markets at lightning speed, and BlackRock, with more than 40% of its hedge fund, would go into crisis. The global real estate bubble would collapse. HSBC, a British-based bank that is heavily overextended in China's real estate market, would go into crisis. China's drafts law to punish parents for their children's misbehavior. China's parliament will consider legislation to punish parents if their young children exhibit very bad behavior or commit crimes. Middle East. Egyptian army consolidates its control over northern Sinai. A series of watchovers, checkpoints and army posts mark the northern tip of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, and troops patrol in armored vehicles along paved roads. Diver discovers 900-year-old Crusader sweat in Israel. A diver found an impressive 1 meter long sweat with a 30 centimeter hilt on the seabed off the coast of Har Carmel, Israel, on October 16th. A group of criminals stole $35 million from a bank by cloning the voice of a manager. That's the amount of loot a group of criminals managed to steal without even pulling out a gun or using an ounce of violence. They simply cloned the voice of a senior manager of a company, called the bank where his company's funds were held, and managed to transfer them to other accounts. It happened in the United Arab Emirates. Help for Afghanistan. Afghanistan's new Taliban rulers won the backing of 10 regional powers and at talks in Moscow on Wednesday for the idea of a United Nations donors conference to help the country avoid economic collapse and a humanitarian catastrophe. IMF cuts Asia growth forecast, warns of supply chain risks. The International Monetary Fund on Tuesday cut this year's economic growth forecast for Asia and warned that the new wave of supply chain disruptions and inflationary pressures pose downside risks to the outlook. Curious. Israeli startup unveils easy-to-drive flying car for people with no pilot experience. The two-seater electric aircraft will cost about $200,000. Israeli startup Air has unveiled Air One, a concept vertical takeoff and landing aircraft for personal use. It is an easy-to-operate two-seater electric aircraft that the company intends to sell directly to consumers starting in 2024. The aircraft weighs 970 kilograms and has a flight range of 177 kilometers at a cruising speed of 161 kilometers per hour. Mount Aso erupts in southwestern Japan. Mount Aso, located in southwestern Japan, erupted Tuesday, spewing ash several kilometers into the sky and prompting authorities to warn of the threat of lava flows and rockfall, with no injuries detected in the area of the volcano, which has been declared on alert, obviously. More evidence that the Earth tips over from time to time. New evidence attests to a planetary tilt in Earth's past, in which the planet's solid outer layer may have wobbled or even tipped relative to the axis of rotation. The phenomenon is known as pole shift, the movement of a pole relative to a fixed frame of reference. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.